Welcome to the July 17th, 2023 Town of Richmond Water and Sewer Commission meeting. Any public comments?
Morgan, this is David. I just want to pass a huge thank you to town staff, water, sewer, highway, everybody's really stepping up to the plate and getting out. I know people's patience are being tested, people's frustrations are high. But I'm very impressed with the community involvement and rallying here in Richmond. It's much different in the town that I work in, so I appreciate coming home to Richmond.
Yeah.
And also want to pass along my condolences to the first responders who pulled the victim out of the Huntington River. Unimaginable tragedy. Our hearts and thoughts are with them.
Yeah, it is very tough. And I will second that on the staff. Everybody here really stepped up to the plate.
And you know, there are other ways to get rides in front end excavators.
Just ask, right?
I would have stayed. Really would have. We were fine. We had an evacuation plan. The roof's higher.
Yeah, good. Have somebody float your snacks down. So anybody else, any more comments? Okay. That will move on. Let's see, additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda.
We have had more storms since the agenda was posted. Do we need to add anything to catch us up on what happened last night?
We can talk about it under item A, I think, but
Okay.
none of that really affected water, wastewater.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry.
We might modify the dates on item A.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
10 to 17. Okay.
Flood 1 and flood 2.
And 3.
Please don't say 3.
That's
Well, it was
Friday.
kind of like 2 yesterday.
Well, yeah, I'm counting 2.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was 2 different downpours with 2 different damages. But yeah.
I think just getting back, David, to what you were saying last night, on our street, one of our neighbors' driveway, looks like somebody took a backhoe and went down each side, and there were 10 or 15 people out there helping.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. So we've updated that. Update on July 10th through 17th, 2023 flooding, including boil water notice.
Sure. Well, maybe we'll start with the boil water notice. That has been lifted. Initially, we were told it was going to take 10 days to do one of the tests. The folks from the state testing lab worked, I think, through the night, maybe 2 nights.
Yeah.
And by Saturday afternoon, they were able to tell us.
They made the mistake of giving me their personal number because my voice box was full. They texted me on their personal number. So I used that all day Saturday to check up, and they literally ran our things right through. And I mean, they were still telling me in the morning on Saturday morning that it was going to be a week to 10 days before that other test got done. And at 4 o'clock on Saturday, they emailed me the results of that other test. So everything was good. Emailed it to the state approved lifting the boil water, and we resumed pumping, and everything is A-okay. Because the reservoir is so low and we're pumping so much, we're basically pumping 24 hours a day. We ran out of fluoride in the system yesterday or this morning. It wouldn't, so we had to unplug the fluoride and stir up a batch. It has to settle overnight, and we'll turn it back on in the morning. Chlorine levels are right up to where the state wants them, which are back up a little higher than we normally carry them, but they want it back up there to get all the system back up to a higher level of chlorine. But really, we came through the boil water problem pretty decently. We shut the pumps off. Brad shut the pumps off on Monday night. As soon as the floods started to come over the road, I came back at 8 o'clock. We brought everything in the plant up online and started running the plant at full capacity, the wastewater plant. At about 11 o'clock, we literally couldn't pump our effluent out of the plant anymore. Kendall had installed an effluent sub pump after Irene. We brought that up online. It had a lot of issues, and until about 1 a.m. before I got all of them, and so that it would pump and keep running, it kept overheating. We got that all back up. Everything was running in the plant, and it was running at peak capacity.
So was this that thing that you said was, it could be a pump or it could be an exhaust fan, but not both?
Yeah,
So that
Yes.
not, that lasted, it did not overheat.
it didn't, and I'll tell you what, at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was at wit's end because I was literally resetting it every 10 minutes. And if that pump wasn't pumping, it basically was gonna flood the filter room. And we would have had to buy new pump motors and maybe even pumps for the filter system. And no telling how high it would have got. But keeping that pump running was a godsend because it basically, we were just pumping our effluent out of the plant and kept the plant dry. It was as simple as opening up the breaker box and putting a box fan blowing cold air on it.
Really?
That's all it was.
Just to keep the humidity out.
To buy a new one that's more robust.
We're gonna get it wired different. But literally, we got that running, the plant stayed dry. Everything worked good. About 3 o'clock, the roof drains that are connected started to overflow into the basement of where our influent pumps are. We put a sub pump in there and it cured that problem, but that just goes to show we really need to get rid of those roof drains from the system.
Did the debris get in the roof drains? Is that what happened or?
No, the way it works is literally our wet well was so full that, and that's where the influent from the town comes in,
Mhm.
that our system that dumps into there, it couldn't dump in anymore.
So just backed up.
It backed up.
And then over at the water house, we had to buy a new pump to get the clear well empty, right?
We did buy, yeah, that's we had to buy a sub pump to pump out the clear well. Oh, at the water house, that got overflowed with sediment. There's nothing we really could do about that. We wanted to pump out the clear well to get as much of the sediment out, and we bought a small sub pump and did that. And then we flushed the well, we shock treated the well, we shock treated the clear well, and we cycled probably 10 times the clear well, which is 3,700 gallons. We probably 10 times we cycled that, flushing everything out of the system. We got a chlorine residual in there that the state liked, and then they gave us permission to bring that back up online because we had shut that off. And during the whole flooding time, we were running on the tank water out of the reservoir. And the problem was we were getting dangerously low to not having a chlorine residual just because the chlorine in the tank over time breaks down.
Mhm.
But we had chlorine residuals the whole time, so there was no issues. And once we had the clear well and everything cleaned, we brought the system back up online and it worked down. It just coincided. We brought the pumps on and they lifted the boil water notice all at the same time.
Oh,
And you're back just about full in reservoir now, right?
The reservoir's up, it was up to about 20 feet tonight. It was down to 13,
What's full capacity?
24.
Okay.
Bart?
I have two unrelated questions. The first is around the roof drain. So it's ironic that we are hoist on our own petard regarding stormwater and wastewater. Is decoupling the roof drains from the treatment system on our list of
It is on the upgrade. It has been, when the engineers came through, I told them that was a mandatory thing. They need to, I would like to see them disconnected and hooked to storm drain is where they should be. Granted, the storm drains wouldn't have done us much good.
Well, so that's sort of my point, at the same time that we're poised to have this issue around stormwater connections for everybody else. It would seem to me that we should hold ourselves
Yeah,
to a rigorous standard and do that sooner.
I
rather
agree.
than later. Yeah. And my second one is about, as I understand, it was a sump pump that was overheating.
Yeah.
So two things, I assume rewiring is on the list. It seems like 1940s submarine approach to put a fan on.
hey, you know what? When I left at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning, we called Nate Fredericks to discuss, do we shut the plant down? What do we do? And Nate said, how is it running? And I said, everything is running right at tilt. And he's like, leave it, leave it in auto. We had Alan monitoring it on SCADA. And when I got back in Wednesday morning at 5:30, everything was still running. It was bone dry everywhere in the basements and everything was running perfect.
So you mentioned.
So the
rewiring.
fan saved our butt.
I hear you. But so that's like the emergency thing, right? The urgent, like you put a fan on it, but let's.
I didn't even have a prayer that was gonna work.
Well, thank you for thinking of it. But now that we know it worked, it would seem to me that rewiring it is a near-term job, but also in terms of redundancy, should we have a replacement on the shelf in case it fails?
It's a massive sub pump. And I don't know if I think it needs to be exercised on a more regular basis. I think this was installed for after Irene, and I don't think it's really been used
Since Irene.
since Irene. I think it's something that we should, at certain point, flick the switch and let it run for a day or, a couple hours or whatever, just to exercise it and make sure it's working. I'll have you know that if we didn't have that free influent pump that we got from Phil Laramie, and I have thanked him 100 times on the phone, we would have been sunk. We'd have a temporary pump over there right now. And we're not, but
Well, we're tap dancing on the edge of the abyss, but we have yet to fall in.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, to follow through on everything that happened after we evacuated from the system, I went home for about 2 hours, 3 hours. And then the discussion is what to do. The pump station was then completely underwater.
That's on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the run surge.
So we made arrangements with P&P to start pumping out the manholes on the other side to keep everybody who's using the system low. We talked with Stone Corral so that they wouldn't by chance dump their 2,500 gallons of waste into the system. We didn't need to deal with that. And then so we started to pump. The pump station at that time was completely underwater and most of the control panels were completely underwater at that time. I came back at 4 o'clock and we made the decision. We plugged the line up further because P&P was just, at that point, we're still just the floodwaters were just going in and we were just sucking floodwater. So we moved back one manhole, we plugged the sewer line, isolating everything on the other side of the system. And then we just pumped it out repeatedly using P&P's truck every night. We saved a little money because they just hauled it up to the school and dumped it into our manhole up there. We didn't have to truck it to another plant and pay to get rid of it because our plant was still running. That worked for the night. 5 o'clock the next morning, I came 5:30, Josh texted me, the waters were down. I got down to the plant about 5:30. Plant was running. Next thing was called P&P to come into the pump station. Turned all the power off. I had already called the night before. Dan Pratt was online. Phil Laramie were online. Phil had already ordered replacement motors for us if we needed them to put down in the pump station. For some reason, when I opened the pump station, the water level, even though there was water flowing over that pump station, the water level was about 6 inches below all of the electrical.
Well, after Irene, we made the hash waterproof.
Okay.
All we thought we did.
To some level.
Yeah, well, there was still about 2,500 gallons of water down there.
But it wasn't full.
It wasn't full.
It filled in Irene.
Yeah.
Oh.
So first thing was P&P truck here, we pumped out the pump station. While that was happening, I got into the electrical panels, had a conversation with Dan Pratt. I went through, dried everything out as best I could. And then 9 o'clock, we had pumped out by 9 o'clock, we had pumped out the manhole that feeds into the system through the switch, and it's been running ever since. We have a small glitch with a float in the pump house itself. That's why the light is blinking all the time. Dan Pratt's guy came and sussed it out that it's the float. We had Phil Laramie's guys come and verify that everything, because we're not gonna find space. They went down in the manhole on Friday and confirmed that everything is working, everything is good. The only thing that happened was a check valve broke on the sub pump inside the pump container. They changed that. They brought the dehumidifier and everything that was up high. Everything's back online in there now. But there's still some problem with the float, and they took all the information. They're gonna pick one up and they're gonna change it at some time, but that has nothing. As long as we keep looking in there and make sure it's not filling with water, we're okay. The pump station and everything's running, the plant's running. Last night, we were almost down in our wet well to normal levels at the plant. And of course, last night we've got filled back up. There was a discharge during the night. The filter tanks overflowed because we were pumping too much volume through them. I don't believe it should have happened. When I looked at the SCADA system tonight, all the alarms for the last night had been wiped off. And the 2 filter tank alarms are disabled. They should not ever be disabled.
Have they
They were in
on,
working order before.
but somebody disabled them?
The SCADA system should have been monitored where we wouldn't have had that. It was not a biggest flow that we had dealt with. So I know the plant shouldn't have discharged. But when I went down to take a sample, there was large amount of solids floating in the effluent, and there should never be any solids in the effluent.
Of course, right.
Are those alarms hooked back up now?
Huh?
Were you able to hook the alarm back up?
I've left them just the way they were. I did not enable them. I was not the one that disabled them.
So that's a follow-up.
Mhm.
action item.
Yeah.
Can I ask also, Maureen, when you're saying there was a release of untreated effluent?
It's treated, but it's not filtered.
Okay, so treated but not filtered, and do we know what the volume of that was?
I have no idea. We could suss it out, but when I looked because we have a graph chart
Mhm.
for flow
Yeah.
going out over the weir. And when I looked at that this morning, there were several points where it went off the chart.
Hmm.
It just doesn't read anymore.
Right. So it just shows overflow and that's it.
For 2 days, the plant operated it going about 450,000 gallons through the plant.
Hmm.
I mean, the charts are perfect. Actually, for the 2 days, it didn't change it. We slowed it down a little and you saw that it went down to about 300. But
So we can pretty positively conclude that there is stormwater going to the plant now.
well, at this point, there's, yes. That water, you couldn't have done it during the storm, you couldn't have done anything about it. All the manholes in the park were overflowed. And they all have, I mean, they're not big holes, but you take an inch hole and you start adding it.
Right, so even if every storm drain in town, every downspout in town had not been connected to the sewer system, we still would have had water.
Yeah,
That's
at
what-
that point, I mean, they're supposed to be floodable manhole covers, but they have a hole about that big in them.
We need to get like a crowbar, right? or something
Right,
up.
to pull them open. You know, do you really want manholes that stick up higher in the park? They already stick up high enough, I think.
8-foot manholes,
Huh?
8 foot high.
Well, that's what, I mean, what do you do? I mean,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
I have to wonder also like on our street where I see the sewer manholes as well. I mean, we know that water was covering the streets, adds up.
Yeah, I mean, when you get flood stage like we were at, that you know there's water going in
Right.
Yeah,
and there's nothing you can do about it.
Still, we came out a lot better than like
We did.
Montpelier and.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Just lucky.
I can't even imagine what Burlington is going through. I mean, they didn't even have the flood and they've got a broken sewer main in the middle of the Winooski. And they're 24 hours a day pumping and taking it from one side to the other with
Well,
trucks.
That
Question,
happens every summer.
you know, we compete with some of these other plants for septage. Is Montpelier, I'd heard various conflicting things about Montpelier's plant. Is it functional? Do you know?
Right now, the only plant that I know of that's taking septage is Shelburne.
And we still are, right?
No.
No?
We can. On Monday, the plant was full. And the press, we've had some problems with the press not operating right. So the decision on Monday, yay, during the rainstorm, we decided to strip the press apart and do a complete maintenance of it. That is done, but in the process, we found out that the water solenoid going to the polymer mixing tank was leaking by all the time. So it wasn't giving us a consistent polymer mixture. And that might have been one of the problems why we were having such problems trying to get solids out of the septage. We've got one coming in at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. It was the quickest one I could find.
So I'd say, take it out, put it back in.
It's all
fix it.
taken, the solenoid's all taken out.
Mm.
Part of the problem was the solenoid had been in place for so long. It was literally the conduit was disintegrated. There were no markings on the solenoid. Had to go back to the book and try to figure out what one we needed. We pretty sure we got it all sussed out right and everything and
Right.
ordered, and it'll be supposed to be in at 10 o'clock, pick it up at 11.
Mhm.
Right now, the plant is completely full of septage. We can't take anymore. And it's been in the tanks since Monday. So there's a concern about how long we can keep it without it going septic. It's being aerated, but it's progressively getting stinkier and stinkier at the plant.
Sure, man, it's hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
So all in all, for our crappy little plant, we did all right, I think. By
think-
Wednesday, we were all back up and running.
I'm grateful to you guys for just giving up sleep for a little bit there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Whatever had to be done.
So it sounds like maybe a few things might be added to the 20-year study or,
Yes.
right, and,
Yeah, like I had told Jay, that sub pump is not wired. One of the reasons it's not wired in as its own unit. I don't know why. It is wired in, so you either get exhaust fan or you get the sub pump. You don't get both. There's a switch. It
I was
says.
thinking maybe we want to get redundant systems, maybe.
Well, yeah.
either or, but not a both.
I guess that the service entrance isn't big enough for both.
I believe we have all kinds of electricity there. Yeah.
Well, may just be the box setup. It was faster to just.
Well, I think it was, who didn't want to spend the money to wire it back to the electrical box on its own.
Put it on the circuit.
And because for the most part, the exhaust ones weren't ever used.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Long and short. It's running,
Thank you.
and the state did really well by us as far as getting our boiled water notice lifted.
Well, apparently it's the only way to get you to stop calling.
Squeeze you will.
You will. That's
Do
exactly.
what you have to do. You know, when I told Josh, 7 to 10 days, and I'm standing in front of the state lab up in Colchester, and I tell Josh that, and he's like, oh my God, what are we gonna tell people? And, I'm like,
I'm still confused. 10 days could either be because there's some tests that literally takes 10 days to.
it doesn't, but they
Is that
thought
just their
because,
backlog?
because they were so backlogged with, we're not the only water system. We were the first water system to get our numbers back. But we were also the first water system to get all our samples in. And,
Good job.
And that test required distilling. You think?
I don't know what, I don't, that's why we take them to the lab.
Yeah, well, that's the question I asked that day when I called up, because I called whoever the section supervisor is and asked, can we go faster? And she talked about, oh, there's decanting and there's this and there's that. I'm like, so it literally takes 10 days to do this test, even if we go as fast, yes. And then when he calls me on Saturday, I'm like, but wait, I thought it was a 10-day ride to Albuquerque. He's like, we got there yesterday.
Star Trek and Mr. Scott. What, it'll take 8 hours. He can sit down in 2.
I couldn't
He always
believe it.
knew it would be 2, but he didn't say 8, so he could.
So,
Maybe, I don't know, but whatever they did, they got it done, and apparently it doesn't take.
so
10 days,
I
it takes
will
24
say
hours.
this, we took bacteria samples to get tested. And we took them to the state, but we also took bacteria samples to Endyne. The state bacteria samples had an accident in the lab, and the oven was at too high a temperature.
But cooked them.
They cooked them,
Mhm.
but our Endyne ones all came back passing, so that covered us. And that was really Brad's like, I want to take our bacteria samples to Endyne like we always do. And we also took them in because the state lab wanted them.
Hmm.
So they're like, he's like, well, you don't have bacteria samples. Oh, yeah, we do.
Mm.
So it was a
Thank you.
good
Brad.
thing that we had done that. It
Yeah.
cost 25, I think I saw the bill from Endyne. It was $25 to have our 3 bacteria samples done. And
All right.
Less than a lunch in Burlington.
yeah, yeah.
Unless you go to Beansies.
Oh, okay,
That's still open?
good.
So all in all, we survived pretty well, I think.
Yeah, we
I
did.
really do.
Thank you.
Well, it's a real credit to the work you guys put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is.
It really is, my thought is, it's curious to me that it happens in the midst of this scan of what do we need to do, so that's where I go, like, what does this add to our list?
Yeah.
Right.
And
From this experience?
I have and I have a email from Jennifer, the engineer at Holt Tanner. And I've documented everything that we did and everything that I think needs to be addressed in the study. And I'll be sending that out to her.
She's the lead on the 20-year.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. And she reached out, wanted to know exactly what how the plant operated and stuff. I think you might have forwarded it to me, but
Or she copied me.
anyway, I've detailed everything that we did and everything that we need help with. But I really think for the most part, our system, I was talking with Heinsberg's wastewater guy today. They don't know what to do. They're in desperate, their lagoons are close to running over because of all the water. And they can't pump sludge to Burlington because Burlington's dealing with what they've got to deal with, so.
What a mess.
Okay. That'll be something we could talk about for quite a while, just.
Yeah,
Okay, review of list of water and wastewater items to be repaired or replaced.
so I'll give you a quick thing. We've upgraded we've gone completely through the press and rebuilt it. The parts that we needed to that are repairable and rebuildable, we did that over the rainy. That's all back together. We need this solenoid valve that's coming back in tomorrow. And we're hopefully going to bring the press up online and start running that tomorrow afternoon. We've also reached out to have a polymer expert from the company come in and go through a jar test to figure out if we're using the right kind of polymer and stuff. It was scheduled for last Thursday. Obviously, we couldn't do it then. We've rescheduled. It's supposed to be rescheduled. And when he's here, he's supposed to be an expert on running the press. So we're going to talk a little bit about how the press runs and see if Brad and I can get educated a little bit on that.
Okay, oh, that's good. And but you don't know when it's been rescheduled for?
I don't, Alan had taken the lead on that.
Okay. Well, that's great.
That's the
But it-
only-
Seems like we kind of went over the other stuff.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, I think the only, we were hoping to have bids reviewed prior to tonight's meeting for the water tank mixer. We haven't gotten to that.
yeah, I think that didn't.
Has been a little busy.
Let's see, talked about the cleaning. Screen? Did you talk about that?
The what?
Install screen prior to, oh, this is gonna be, that's right, that's the screen that we talked about, but we added that onto the list from last meeting. But that's the
Yeah.
that's the longer, more involved project, but I just wanted to highlight that we added that, we talked about it. And then repair non-essential items in wastewater pump station.
That's the stuff you were saying that Phil's gonna come do.
Yeah, so we wanted to add those on from last meeting,
Yeah.
so we added those. And yep, yeah, obviously, a lot of the last 2 weeks was flood preparations and recovery.
Mhm.
Say just add it to the list if anything.
And for the plan for the septage, we can't get the septage out of the tank until
Press is running.
all the press is running, right?
And the solenoid's coming, you should have that online tomorrow, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
You said 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but I mean, we think that the best way to proceed is to batch the digester. So we have the digester full already. We're gonna process what's in there through the press. Then we're gonna pump out of the tanks, filling the digester again. We just don't know how well the press is gonna react to the septage that's been kind of stale. So we're gonna small batch it into the digester. It will probably take a day and a half to do it that way. Plus, our line is still plugged underneath. So we're still sucking over the top of the digester. It's not ideal, but the solids are still plugged underneath.
You just about had that down prior to the flood, I
Yeah.
think, and then obviously could not.
We were
That
hopefully gonna
process.
be able, so we really ideally want to do is take this week, process the solids that we've got, get them out of the tanks, get our tanks empty, and then try to, when we get the digester empty the last time, we want to try to get a pump truck in and actually blow. I mean, we hooked a fire hose up to it and it would blow in to the digester last time. But as soon as we hooked up the pump, it just went. And we couldn't pump through it. So we're still pumping over the top with a suction hose.
So to address that, you empty it out? Like literally get rid of it, empty it out, get rid of the sludge, like.
Well, we empty it out, we throw a vac truck over the side in the digester and suck near the outlet. I mean, this is part of the cleaning that we really have to do, and this shows you why.
Yeah.
Once we get that cleaned out, then we'll actually hook the truck up to the other side of the line and actually pressurize it back into the digester and blow everything out. We had to do it last summer about the same time too. We had kind of the same problem. The solids just get all built up around it and it just sucks it right.
And this should be done every 6 to 12 months anyway.
The digester should be cleaned out completely at least once a year,
Right,
and it hasn't been.
right, okay.
Which-
And this goes to the fact that those tanks underneath the septic receiving, those tanks got 3 feet, 4 feet of solids in them. You know, and they're just sitting there percolating right now. So,
Who knows, we may evolve a new form of life.
huh?
We may evolve a new form of life in them.
Yeah, I'm sure we have.
Creature from the whatever lagoon.
Does it seems intuitive that one of the benefits of emptying the tank is then you get to inspect the tank and the component parts.
Correct.
'Cause
Oh, and
otherwise you're guessing.
I didn't mention this, but when we started on Monday to flood, we talked it over with Nate and we made the decision. We cracked the valve going into our empty fish tank. And we diverted part of the flow into that big tank that was empty and just used it as a holding tank. And kind of like an equalization basin. And we're now pumping it back in slowly. It kind of let us operate the plant at a little higher capacity than we normally could. Because we were just letting a little bit of it go into that tank and sit there.
Mhm.
Um,
Fortunately, it was empty.
Alan just texted me that the polymer guy is checking his schedule and probably would be next week before we can get him in.
Okay, well,
Okay, good.
Thank you, Alan.
All right. Anything else on this list we need to?
No.
Gotcha, okay.
So,
All right.
Thanks for keeping at it.
Yeah, thank you. It's hopefully the list will get
Oh.
down.
and your wedding anniversary was last,
Monday night.
Oh,
I got home for dinner.
That's good.
yeah, and then back,
Huh?
and then right back.
Yeah,
and that's 3 years.
yeah.
You've been together for a while, but this is 3
Yeah,
years wedded.
yeah.
wonderful.
That's commitment.
That is commitment.
Sometime I'll tell you the story of my 25th.
That was when we had that hearing at the school, right?
And I was
About expanding the water district.
run out of the school on a pitchfork.
Oh,
There was some vituperation that night.
So,
Okay.
My wife was so happy when I got home.
yeah, mine is still.
But you're still married.
Yeah.
Next, item C, discussion of Water Resources Department staffing level. And Josh?
Yeah, so this is something I was actually talking with Nate Fredericks a bit about. He's the guy that's overseeing as a certified operator. And as I look at the work, and as I've come a lot closer to what they do every day over the last few months and just seeing how much they're trying to get through, even with 4 people, there's a lot that they have to do on a daily basis. And then as they're reacting to things that break or fail, And then as we're trying to go to bigger projects, like even the water meters or anything in the 20-year study, just conducting that, there's extra staff time involved in that. So I was talking with Nate about, would it make sense to have a fifth person? And he thinks it really probably would. And I think so too, looking at how many projects are out there as we've got storm drains that are connected. We want to replace water meters, there's a lot of stuff in the 20-year study. The list goes on, not even including the list that we've just looked at. So looking at that, if we were to bring in somebody else, like the lead process or lead mechanical level, like which is what Steve and Brad are at, it's about $90,000 for a rough ballpark with like full total cost of employee. That would be benefits, wages, everything.
So we're not thinking an operator in training.
Well, I mean, we could do there. This is a sort of like initial discussion. We could potentially do that. And I haven't even really gotten feedback from Steve or Alan or Brad much either. But I wanted to bring it up to see if it's something that you guys would consider and at least start the conversation.
So because I know in our budget for staffing, there was unused funds because we weren't at full capacity. So is this an additional
It would be.
90,000?
Yeah, so this, right now, our budget is for for the 3 staff that we currently have, plus another, actually. For 3 staff, so a superintendent, and then I guess like 3 lead operators essentially. So that gives us our 4, and then this would be for a 5th position.
I
I
mean, I say yes.
would agree. I mean, we have been ridiculously lucky in many respects.
Absolutely.
And we've just spent the last 40 minutes talking about the absurd amount of work these guys did. I mean, there are always emergencies, but frankly, we shouldn't be making, like, what if one of you had been sick? You probably would have come out and worked anyway, I know, but still, I mean, we have no redundancy with our current.
Do what needs to be done.
And also
And
just
as you
personal
point out,
time and vacation
A lot
time,
of
just
more stuff is coming up.
with a lot more
Yeah.
coming up. And every day there's 5 new ideas that we should try to do. And with more staff, we could probably do one of those.
I'll just say, every time I walk through the plant, I can come up with a list of things that
Mhm.
should be done just by what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not even getting into this, the sort of detritus and the inventory, and I think of like a broken window. Somebody replaced the broken window. Not if it's a
No, I
high-
don't think we have any broken windows.
So I think that there's a backlog from what I've observed of sort of deferred maintenance, and now we've got a bunch of projects that managing our way through them is a bolus of work.
We are short-staffed. I mean, under Kendall, there were always 3 operators. And then the superintendent. So we essentially have been operating with 2 operators right now.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed even, and I wasn't part of the commission then, but it even seemed with Kendall and the operators that we were slowly getting behind or quickly getting behind. I don't know which. So I would think in going forward, I mean, you look at the list, my gosh.
We are operating, trying to get through to this 20-year study really right now is basically what we're doing.
My observation is if we do hire another person, and I hope that we also get a superintendent, but that we do need to think about, hopefully the superintendent and the new person come at the same time, but if we get another person, how to put them in and get everybody tasked, because it seems like then you might be able to work in pairs or whatever needs to happen. And probably you would need to be involved if we don't have a superintendent, but it kind of seems like you guys sort of know what your daily tasks are, but as we add another person and more things, if we don't have a fearless leader yet, we're going to need clear tasks for that person to do.
And on that subject,
Do we want to jump to that?
Yeah, let's jump to
Next.
G.
Okay. Sure, so that's just want to make a note where we're at. So I think last time we covered that we do have 2 people that are interested in the superintendent position. We had one of them out a few weeks ago to meet with staff. The second person was supposed to come out on Monday, this past Monday, but obviously canceled due to this impending flood. They've rescheduled for this Thursday at 2:00, so they'll be here to meet with our staff at that point. And after that, I'd like to hopefully make a decision on which one to offer the superintendent position to. But thought could be that, one we don't offer it to might be interested in still coming to work for us, but just in a different capacity. So we might potentially have two people right now. But we'll have to see. Steve? Oh,
Can I say something?
yeah, I think it's for the chair.
Yes, Steve.
After a long and lengthy debate, I want the superintendent's position.
Okay,
Right.
where do you, where, are, not opposed to it. I know that Alan was in it under a provisional because he hadn't passed a certain test. Where are you on your certifications?
I cannot be certified to operate the plant for 4 years. I haven't taken my test yet,
Mhm.
but I have to have 4 years' experience. The superintendent doesn't have to be certified at a 4. As long as somebody at the plant is certified at a 4.
So like the arrangement we've got right now with the guy coming in 1 day a week, that makes it legal?
That makes it legal. Brad has enough experience and is in the process right now studying to get to his 4.
Oh, okay.
Brad is willing to do that if I'm willing to take the superintendent's position, if it would be offered to me. I want to take this plant in Richmond through the 20-year study and back up to where it should be.
Okay.
So I just have a suggestion between item C and this item G. This is a new permutation of those. And I think we have to defer it into the next meeting, deferring to Josh as the hiring manager. What are we going to do with all that mix? And what I perceived in body language here was receptivity from the commission to entertain a 5th position, right?
Mhm.
And so what that would look like with 5 positions and who's where
Right.
is maybe an update at our next meeting. Does that seem plausible?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, that's good. You're right. I think we need 5 people, it seems. And we just have to sit and have the discussion, but no.
I'm already doing the job, I feel.
Mhm.
I agree. And it's not that big a step. But there needs to be some leadership to get us through floods and the 20-year upgrade.
Right.
And after going through the flood, I don't think it's a problem to get us through in the town of Richmond through a 20-year upgrade and get our plant back to where it's operational and running great.
Steve, again, I'm no arguing your suitability for
No.
the position. How many, when do you hit your 4 years?
What?
When do you hit your 4 years?
I'm a year and a half in.
Okay,
You need 4, you see you need 4 total, not 4 additional from where you're at.
Right.
so you need
So
2.5.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And you almost have the water license?
I haven't been able to schedule it because I had to wait a year as an
Okay.
apprentice
That's right.
before I can take it. And I just haven't gone. Well, there's been every other, I don't know why, but
Time in.
I don't,
Time in for water 2, right? You just need. to
in
pass.
October, my water 3 license is activated. I've already passed that.
Okay, it's just the timing of that.
If
So
I needed-
water's available in October.
Yeah.
Okay.
My water 3, I've already passed the test, did that last October. But I had to have a year, 18 months experience for it to become operational.
Wastewater is still.
And I have all that.
So,
gotten 18 months in the last year?
No.
Like time for good behavior or something.
Hours, right?
so from like an HR standpoint, does Steve have to do anything
Do you?
to
do you
be
need me to
considered for that
officially
job? You know, like, is there
apply?
something, because you have 2 candidates and you're in the interview process, is there anything that
Yeah.
Steve needs to do to be officially added to that queue other than say he's interested?
I think, yeah, officially apply, which is give me a cover letter, resume and a couple of, and 3 references. And then
Any of you guys want to be a reference?
we might, we should do an interview like we would.
Right, I mean, I guess it just seems like,
Just follow the process, just to make.
If I haven't
we're
in a
giving-
year and a half proven that I'm gonna give everything to this plant.
110,
just-
yeah,
But
but
just to follow, to make sure we're following.
No, I know.
Not a knock on anything.
Yeah.
Hopefully you understand that.
yeah,
No, that's
and I'm asking that from like I don't
Legal edge or perspective.
legal, like you gotta cross your T's and dot your I's.
that's right. You don't
Yeah.
want somebody to come back somewhere.
Right.
And say, oh, wait a minute.
Right,
And I'm not
They-
saying, I want you guys to make the decision, but I'm just gonna tell you that I'm interested and I really want to take this plant
That's
in
great.
this town forward.
Well, no, it's good. I mean, that you've stepped up. I mean,
Yeah.
you're interested. and-
Do you think there'd be a lot of learning curve if you stepped into the position, learning about how our plant works and stuff?
No, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh, okay.
There's very few parts of that plant that I haven't been.
Right?
okay, so cover letter,
To be,
cover letter, resume,
Resume, 3 references, and then we'll continue with the process and, but
Okay.
yeah, I think it can be, doesn't have to be a super long process because we know the other 2 candidates, we know Steve
Yeah.
pretty well.
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you, Steve.
I just, it's been a long debate to get to here.
Mm.
But I really want to see the upgrade of the plant and the water system and everything. I want to see it through.
We'll make sure we'll do it on your next anniversary too.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, any more comments? Item D, review of monthly water data for June.
Yeah, we'll line up.
There's that.
So we only had, everything's looking really good. We only had 2 spots or 3 spots there in fluoride that were slightly below the 0.6. 1 spot here in chloride, what did we put? Yeah, we're supposed to be at 0.8 for the
Mhm.
state, so we're a little
That
bit
one we're
below
mixing
there.
from, or?
Though, yeah, those low points for the fluoride are when we're mixing.
Mhm.
And then just a couple spots in the pH. So I think overall our monthly numbers are looking good. We added the descriptions to the top as well. So hopefully it's a quicker, easier reference.
Right.
Yeah, it's great, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Easy to follow. So I have a question. I mean, what does the state expect when they see you missed a couple of blips like that? Is it still left up to their judgment whether?
Yeah, I mean, I know when I talked to them a lot about fluoride, specifically about fluoride back in the fall. You know, they were like, yeah, we expect you to be down here and there, or even up here or there, because it's not a perfect process, but consistently within the range is sort of what it seems like they're looking for. And we've been a lot more consistently in the range since October than we've ever been in the last 10 years.
So it's not just the average. We're hitting the 0.7.
Yeah, we're hitting the 0.7 most every day, and we're at the average of 0.7. So I think actually 0.6 is the low. So
Right.
the 0.7 is what the optimal is, if I recall correctly.
Right.
And so that even when, when Steve told me they were offline on fluoride for a couple of days, I think the state will understand, given the circumstances. And overall, we're fluoridating the water to the appropriate levels. If there's 2 days where it's not, like, when they're explainable, I think that's fine. I think the state would too.
And if you look at the data from the from the wastewater treatment plant, the fluoride levels actually stay up. This is at the water house.
Right.
So the water that's in the system actually stays up. And usually is, like a 6.6.
Right.
I,
They must take that into account though. I would
Yeah.
think, yeah.
the only way we have figured out that we could stop the fluctuation in the fluoride for the day that we have to mix it is, and we've toyed with the idea of actually mixing a second barrel and then just pumping that in to the first barrel. So we would have it already a day ahead and would just pump it over. And that should keep our fluoride levels at the right height. I don't know, we've toyed with that idea, trying to maintain that. we really would like to maintain that fluoride level at a 0.7. And Brad and I have talked about it and discussed it. The very last time we did it, I actually came down and turned it on at like 3 a.m. after it had settled, and our fluoride numbers were perfect because it turned on when the pump turned on, the fluoride was hooked up and everything was good. So it worked. I do have a question though, Josh, for the pH on the 11th.
This one here.
Yeah. When the sheet was turned in to Alan, that date was that number was empty.
Oh,
And I do not know where that number came from. And I have a picture of the chart when we turned it in.
I don't know where that.
Real quick, I know that we told back during the fluoride debacle, we said we're gonna be posting these numbers on the town website. I just for grins, pulled up the water and sewer page. I see the consumer confidence reports, but I'm scrolling up and down. I don't see the monthly numbers out there.
So they're in each packet. I can repost them on the website though.
I just think,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, we
people are
should.
not gonna know to go dig
Yep.
into the package.
Nope, I'll do that.
Yeah.
All right. I can't answer with the June 11th question.
So there is a
I see
picture
this.
of it.
I see that now. Okay. I did not see the handwritten. Saw these. Okay.
Okay. Questions, any more questions, comments? Looks pretty good. I mean, we're hopefully the town residents, the users are feeling pretty good about our numbers.
And
And
the state was really responsive on when we started pumping. They wanted to see what our residual were. And, it started down at a 0.29. And that was at like 5 o'clock. And by 8 o'clock, we were up to a 1.02. And we stayed there. I checked it again Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. And we were still at a 0.12 for residual into the system. And the state guy was like, awesome, that's great. So.
good.
I have a follow-up question, which is not directly related. So we're producing for the month of June, a total of 2.3 million gallons, more or less, right?
Yeah, whatever, you did
Yeah.
you total them up? Or,
Well, because the total's on here.
yeah,
Sure. Math easy for me. My question is, and this speaks to sort of leakage or lost water. Do we know what we charge people for in the course of the month? Like if we sent out 2.3 million gallons, how many is it?
so
Hmm.
that goes to with the system really should have a water audit done. And basically what they do in a water audit is they take what you produced in a 3-month time span, and then they take what you build out, and then they figure out we could do this, and with our smart meters, it's going to be really easy for us to do. They would like you to be under a 5% difference. And I don't know, to tell you the truth.
How do you account for what the reservoir difference too, right? Because if your reservoir starts out full and then
The reservoir is pretty much full.
all the time.
Yeah,
Okay.
we keep the reservoir. The reservoir right now, it doesn't get any lower than 21 feet. The pump starts pumping at 21.5 and it shuts off at 23.5.
Mhm.
So we keep the reservoir right there all the time.
Okay.
It's clearly not the highest priority.
No.
But it just strikes me to
But-
be interesting to
Yeah.
know about.
I took a rural water class where they talked a lot about water audits. And it is a justification because our system, I believe, is pretty tight. But there are systems out there that have a lot of leakage. And older systems and, pipes fail and it's way of detecting pipe, failure, water leaks. If you end up like you're making 80,000 a day and, producing 80,000 a day, but your customers are only using 50,000 a day, well, then where's it all going? And that's, I couldn't find any record of a water audit being done at the plant anywhere.
So maybe that's a future,
Yeah.
after the dust settles a little bit.
If
Yep.
I'm bored in the next couple of weeks, I'll work.
Do the audit. So remind me, where is the meter to measure for those numbers?
Right at the
The tank,
water house.
water house. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what's coming out. So that would tell us if there's leakage in any of the lines.
Yeah.
Going to- Okay.
So
Great.
that,
Thank you for
that
bringing
gives you the number coming right out of the clear well into the system.
Right. Okay. Okay. See, update on Gateway sewer expansion.
You want to do that?
Well, I think the short news is, there was the scoping and pressure test of the line at the school. Everything I know is a private line from the road to the school, right?
Yes.
So they own it. It failed the pressure test. And so now there's repairs. And I think there was a question, oh, well, if we repair that leak, will the town take over the line? And I think I personally suggest that we should be cautious. I would say no.
Right.
If it were a new line, I'd suggest that we should be comfortable taking it over. But it's like an old car, if you fixed one part of it and said, here's this old car, I fixed the thing that was wrong with it, but you don't really know what the condition of the rest of the line is. That's kind of my question.
So
What do we know about the line?
the scoping showed about 50 feet in, the pipe sags. And the scope went underwater again. It came back up at about 140, 150 feet. We were above for a little bit and then it went right back underwater again. So that shows that there's a lot of sags in that line. And we could only get the scope to go about just barely under 600 feet. We were hoping to get 900, but it was literally underwater almost the whole time. And then eventually the drag on the line, pulling it through water, it just starts spinning and it wouldn't go any further.
What's the material of the pipe?
The pipe, everything that we saw is PVC.
And do we know what year?
I had no idea. That the school owns it. The school doesn't have any drawings. They don't have any record of it. They don't know what it is. There could be cast iron past where we were. We don't know. And my opinion is, I agree with Bart that unless it's a completely new line, the town, it put into the town standards. We shouldn't be privy to it, taking it over.
And I guess my question is, what would we do if someone else, and I might be the we, but what would you do if someone else came to the commission and asked that same question? You know, if we said, we just repaired our line last summer, would you like to own it now? It's not up to town standards. Like, we have to think when we're doing something like the school line, what would happen in a reverse or with other customers?
Yeah. Have the REAPs commented about the scoping of it? Or-
The one comment I heard is, well, if they repair it, will the town take it over? And I said, I'm only speaking as one member of the commission. And I said, I think that would be contraindicated. And my example was the road at Greystone, which then became sort of an albatross around the neck of the town, because now it's a bunch of repairs for lots of money.
Right.
So it would seem to me the options are they give up. They could take over the school line, own that as well as an extension. what I recall, if I recall correctly, is you cannot have two consecutive private lines
Right.
connected to a public system, so it's one private line. Arguably, the REAP could take it over, extend it, and then it's their line the whole way, and then they are responsible for it. Not enthusiastic because as a private line, it's not eligible for the 140 odd thousand that we have in state
Right.
or in federal grant money. So then it could be a new line the entire way. And what is the cost of doing that? And so it could be a parallel line, leave the school alone. That probably doesn't make sense. Maybe have the school contribute towards a new line that then the town would take over, built by a combination of the town, the school and the REAPs. Back to if it's a new line built to town specs, we would take it over. But I think it then gets a little complicated. I understand secondhand, the school is interested in the town taking it over, which makes sense because they're not in the business of running sewage lines. But the interest of the commission and the current ratepayers are, I think, not to take over a line that will require repairs. You want to take over a new line that's built to spec and properly installed. The fact that there are these sags suggests some concern about the construction and installation, right?
I mean, how carefully was the bed that the pipe was laid in
Right.
constructed?
Is it level kind of?
I mean, they did scope it and it passed the scopings, but that doesn't, obviously it still failed, so.
Well, it didn't really pass the
Didn't really.
scoping. I mean, we know the material, but I mean, when you're underwater, you can't really see, are there cracks or are the joints together?
That's, yeah, kind of
Which brings up a second question, is there leakage of the sewer line, right?
I made Phil from Mel Mansfield, the facilities guy, well aware that there was no pressure at all on the gauge when I tried pressure testing it. And I made him quite aware that there is a problem with your line somewhere with sewage leaking and you need to rectify it.
Mm.
He had called out P&P and they were going to, because nobody knows exactly where the line were, they were going to try to use P&P's line locator to actually plot it out. And then they were going to try to proceed digging up where they might feel that there's leakage, try to fix it. But I'm with Bart that unless it was a completely new line put into town standards, that we should completely shy away from anything up there.
So I'll just add one other comment that there has been a lot of interest from many circles about housing in the gateway. For any like sizable number of units in the gateway, they need sewage in particular. But the way our ordinance is structured and the interest of the current users are not going to pay for an extension to the new user.
right.
So our hands are somewhat tied. Even if we wanted to, our ordinance and the interest of the customers prohibits us from doing that. So then who would put in the new line? And I think there's interest from many circles, but it's expensive. If it were $5,000, it would be done, right? But it turns into quickly hundreds of thousands or $1 million. And that's a stiff enough price tag that nobody really wants to pay for it. And so that's why we're effectively sort of stuck. And from where I sit, all we have is the Water Sewer Commission is our grant money, rounded up to 150,000. That's what we've got in to play with. And so any other money has to come from somebody else. And that becomes speculative, that they're going to have to build it, and it's either in their interest or future economic interest. Arguably, the school could say it's time to replace it if it's got a bunch of problems.
Right.
I think we can probably conclude the town's not going to take it over and replace it for you or repair this line,
Right.
like we wouldn't for
The
anybody.
school needs a service. They can't just shut all this off.
Right.
I think the school bears some responsibility. They may choose to just limp along within its current condition until it fails, which would be
Could be any kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is the liability for the school with like a leaking septic pipe, like,
Like any other entity.
right? I mean, that, at some point, they can't do that, right?
Right.
They're
Yeah,
gonna have
they
to
don't-
deal with it.
I mean, at some point, if it's leaking to the point where it comes to the surface and creates a mess, or, you know, like when a
Yeah.
septic backs up, then it's a health hazard.
And it becomes an
And they
emergency.
have to deal with
Right.
it.
And an emergency price tag is,
Mhm.
So I made Phil, the facilities guy, well aware that, it's leaking. We didn't do anything to it. It's your problem. And that's where it's.
so it does seem like we probably should talk more about this at another time. Because if, I love that we just keep kicking the balls down the pipe, but it does seem like we know that their thing is failing, so if they get together and say, hey, we do want to do this, we've decided it's something we need to build into the 24, 25, 26 budget, whatever it is, and then hope it doesn't get worse between them, then we probably should talk about what would we want, what,
So what I suggested
And
is
maybe
a
that's it.
follow-up meeting that includes the REITs, the
Mhm.
school and us.
Right.
about
Yeah.
Where
And
you want to go
mediator?
forward here. And who?
and a mediator, like, I feel like, not
I
to be
don't
mean,
know,
but like, I mean, I feel like are we the mediator? Like, how does that work from I don't know.
I
standpoint?
think They just have to put things on the table.
table
This,
and-
Yeah.
this is what your line is. Okay, how do you want to proceed? Because there's.
It really
Gotta
is
solve
between the school and the REITs.
Yeah,
If they could come together
Mhm.
and wanted to spend the money between them to bring that line brand new up to our code,
Right.
then I don't have a problem with us saying, take it over.
And we have 150 in the kitty, if that's the route we take. If that's not the route we take, we don't have 150,000. If we don't have 150,000 for a private line, we only have 150,000 for a public line. So that's where there are these sort of,
would it still,
what's the sweet spot? And we have 150,000. And our position is, I think, pretty clear. I don't think we need a mediator. This is what we got. And here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. What do you two want to do?
Yeah.
Right, and I'm sympathetic to upfront on the calls that we have with the briefs. It's Joy is feeling really stressed, but on the other hand, the fact that she's stressed doesn't mean we put her needs before the Water and Sewer Commission, our water customers. But she's starting to see no path forward and just, what was her backup plan, that they were just going to build
Storage units, I think.
storage units down there? Yeah. And at that point, without a partner, if she's just building storage units there, then the whole project is
Yeah. I wonder especially with the school being another public entity, if they don't have some avenues for money as well, though, right?
Right.
You would think so.
Right.
They're not,
The reason they have a three-way conversation, I think.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that's where we left it just before the.
I was just saying, that was Monday morning when I was cleaning up the volunteer screen.
Okay. To be continued.
Is the school direction their only option? I mean, how much more would it be to go down Route 2?
Sure.
a lot,
a lot.
right?
A lot more?
I asked that in the beginning too.
More complicated in terms of permitting and longer. And, you have the setbacks on each side of the road if you do water and sewer, and there's so little infrastructure. There's nothing between the school and the reefs, so,
Right.
So we have very few people to share the cost with.
Yeah, and I guess my other question is, so how does our 150 come into play? Because wouldn't the REAPs be considered a private entity and the school's a private entity if we
take
buy
over
the
the line.
to the school?
To the
It becomes a
reefs.
private line all the way down. We have 150 in play. The grant is to support economic development at the REITs property. So it's got to go all the way to the REITs for 150,000 to be in play, and it's got to be a line owned by the town, the Water Sewer Commission. At the end of the day, for the 150,000 to be in play.
And the town to own it all the way to the REAPs?
Right. To the REITs, yes.
And will the easement allow that as well?
The Richmond Land Trust easement?
Yes,
They've not gotten back to us with a legal.
Another
formal written up.
okay.
Well, these would allow the expansion to the reefs.
Yes,
Right.
That's, I think, pretty
Yeah.
clear.
They just didn't want
Beyond,
anything on
beyond the
others.
reefs is what they're still not getting back to us.
because I guess I thought the 150,000 had to be. It had to be able to go past the reefs if it was so chosen to get the
Mm,
150.
No,
But I might have been
so the
confused.
grant was really just about economic development
Okay,
at the REIT
at the
property,
REITs.
and it was along Route 2. But
Mhm.
we've had some conversations with the granting agency that it seems likely they would allow us to do it over the school
Okay.
because it's still the same end goal, just a different route to get there.
Okay.
There's still, I think there would still be some paperwork and details to sort out there, but in general, I think it would be allowed.
Thank you for explaining
Yeah,
that.
it's complicated.
We have 14 minutes till the select. board
Okay.
meeting.
Okay,
Sorry,
but
yeah.
that's a big item to be
Yeah.
added, to invite the school and.
Yeah, we'll do that
So
in
that's
the
on the
next 3 weeks,
to-do list,
probably, I
right? Yeah.
imagine, right? We'll do that like a sub meeting and then come back. Is that your vision?
Yeah, so I think I sent an email that day saying,
Yeah.
do the follow-up meeting with these folks in the next few weeks.
Yep. Okay, I'll have to find that email in my
Yeah.
pile of emails.
Okay, follow up on discussion of structure of meeting minutes.
So
I
really,
like the new idea.
so what we found out was that the video isn't really a legal, like, I guess, entity of the minutes, but in talking to the LCT, they were saying, well, if you pare down the minutes, you're still meeting the statutory requirements of the minutes. And we wouldn't go so bare bones as like what the statutory requirement is. That's pretty bare bones. There'd be some meat on those bones. Just not as much as there is now. And then we would have a link to the video in each minute so that people could, if they really wanted to dive into something, they could go in and say, well, what was said about that agenda item? And I think Duncan's proposal was have agenda items and timestamps, so you could easily find what it is on the agenda. So,
Yeah, with timestamps, I think that's reasonable.
so
And you're sitting there happily taking them, so.
I have got them, yes,
Yeah.
and they're posted again on the video as well.
Mhm.
I have a suggestion, Maureen. What if we tried this for a couple of months and then say, is it working?
Yeah.
Right,
Because I think, my tendency is to say, like, let's meet the standard and put some meat on the bones as Josh describes. But the sort of like he said, she said becomes a kind of tedious transcription of the meeting, which I think is more than we need,
Very
but that's
clear.
just my perspective.
But I think we could try it for 2 or 3 meetings, and if we hate it or commission hates it, we can go back. I don't know.
What do you folks think?
I still think that with the attention that this committee has garnered, it's not a good idea to change at the moment. I was a little disappointed last week after I said that, and then people were asking questions that if they had read the minutes, they would have known the answers to. But I do think, and one thing I will say, I read the select board minutes like religiously. I don't have time to watch the videos. I don't have time to stick around with the timestamps. I read at night. I read books before I go to bed on my phone. Sometimes I read the select board minutes. There is a ease of reading things and finding different people's opinions out by having them written. That's my only observation. Whereas the synopsis, and then if you want to know more, going back to the video. And I think in all other committees, it's probably fine, but this one seems like it has a lot of things going on, a lot of investment, a lot of strong personalities in a lot of different things. Like, even the REAP stuff, or the gateway expansion, like I read a lot of meeting minutes to know back when some of the fire properties were in discussion with the Route 2 expansion, like I would read the minutes and then be like, doesn't look like we need to go, but I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot going on this committee.
let's do this, let's, I like Bard's,
Try it.
point, right, of offering there. Let's try it. Couple meetings and then, maybe we'll come back, maybe people, participating in the meetings will say, I really can't do this. We got to go back to the old way.
Well, I'm sensitive to what Aaron says.
Yeah.
If there's a member of the committee who's not comfortable with abridging them somewhat, I would rather err on the side of, even though it's Duncan's time we're spending,
Right,
I would rather err on the side of more detail than less, even though I know when you go to the MMCTV website and you bring up the meeting, any given agenda item, it's just basically, you don't even have to fast forward, you just click and you're right there, but I don't feel comfortable just saying, well, one person spoke up, but let's just steamroller ahead anyway. I think it's worth thinking about.
okay, so. Further discussions at next meeting or David, do you have any comments or?
I'm sensitive to Aaron's point.
Right.
I think this is something we should be proud of, not running away from.
Right. And I think you're right. It seems like it's a matter of, it's right there in the minutes. You pick it up, you read through it versus like, okay, I got to stop here. I got to go click and look at a video to understand this better.
And there are times when I referred back to the minutes of meetings that happened 6 or 8 years ago, meetings that I attended. And I can't figure out.
You don't remember that far back?
I'll look back at the minutes. I'm like, huh, that's tell me what I'm looking for.
Okay. So, okay, well, it sounds like maybe we'll keep it as is. Yeah, status quo for now. Okay.
All right.
All right, we've hit G, we have H, follow, sorry, Tucker, that's right. Follow up on sewer ordinance fines and related to stormwater connections. Thank you for the town bylaws, is it, or ordinance?
It's the sewer ordinance from
Yeah, and
1972.
Is it? Yes,
We have to find ourselves.
that's right. Yeah,
You do.
the town's gonna have to find themselves. Wow.
Well, you could find yourself up to $1,000. That's the thing. I think it gives the option,
Right.
right? So that, it's there if you need the hammer, but hopefully you can get people to change without that.
Start sending out notices and say, beware, we're gonna come around.
And that was included in the mailing that we did some months ago. But we obviously have had a lot of time to follow up on it, but Bart brought up the question of if it was in the ordinance, and it is there. So
It is.
wanted to follow back up with the commission and the public that the commission does have that power when and if we get to that point with customers.
Right, yeah, it seems to be referenced in quite a few of these articles, actually, indirect, but certainly directly, and I think it's Article 5. So, all right, so we do have that right. That's it. Now, approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders.
You have 2 purchase orders. Whatever order you want to go in is fine.
Let's go to the purchase orders. You gotta find this.
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve purchase order 4649 in town of Richmond in an amount not to exceed $15,000 for
Jay, second.
Okay, seconds, discussion. This is stormwater, water, okay. No further discussion, so could have a vote on approving purchase order number 4649 in the amount of $15,000.
This is Jay, I.
This is Aaron.
This is David.
Bart, aye. Morgan, aye. Motion pass.
Morgan, this is David. I want to move purchase order 4668 to MSK Engineers for the water service line inventory in an amount not to exceed $43,300. And Josh, this is being reimbursed at 100%, correct?
Correct.
Do you have a second?
Second.
A discussion?
Nope.
No further discussion. So this is asking for a vote on approving purchase order 4668, amount of $43,000 for water service line inventory.
This is Jay, I.
Aaron,
43,300.
I'm sorry. Good catch there.
Actually, Josh, the way this is written, it's 43,000.
400.
Yeah.
433,000.
Oh.
Yeah.
But I see.
Point.
Yeah.
But David,
We'll correct that on the official transcript here.
Morgan, I, the motion is passed.
Thanks for the catch.
Oh, you're welcome. Morgan, this is David. I move to approve the minutes of the July 5th meeting.
This is Jay, second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Let's see, where are the minutes? One minor thing in the minutes. That's the water report.
Did the purchase orders, did we do the warrants? yet?
No,
Not do the warrants. Well, but. Can you bring the minutes up? There was one minor thing.
Okay. Do you remember about what page?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have highlighted this. Yeah, I've got it. Thank you.
oh,
Foreman coats. It was pretty minor. I'll come back to it. All right, so we have a second. Any discussion? No discussion.
Say
Yep.
aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Morgan, I. The motion passed.
Move to accept the warrants as presented.
This is David, I'll second.
Any discussion on the warrants?
Nope.
This is calling a vote on the warrants.
Say aye.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bart, aye.
Morgan, I. The motion passed. So that,
Adjourn.
okay,
There's still an item,
Is there?
Next meeting.
Okay.
items for next agenda.
right, discussion of items for next agenda.
So what I have on my list is follow up on staffing, which has several parts to it. The ever popular review of water and wastewater items. Update on gateway expansion. Hopefully by then we will have had a meeting. And then I think for our item H here, while we've looked at the ordinance, what do we want to do for stormwater connections? We keep seeing the problems with it. So like how to move forward with action, I think is the question.
And then will it be time to talk about the water tank? Will we have had the,
Yeah, we should
The
be able to
swimmer,
do that, I think.
put that on?
The mixer. The water
Oh,
tank, do we get the
yeah.
bids for?
Yeah, we should be able to go through that.
We're talking about the seepage.
yes,
Oh,
I was
oh,
talking about
I
the
wasn't
seepage,
talking about I was talking about the mixer.
but the mixer would be good too.
Seepage.
Is that going out to an engineer?
So Tyler gave us sort of his initial thought. We need to get the diver in there. He wanted it, so that does go with the mixer. When we get the
Right.
mixer finalized, we get the diver in there to clean it. Tyler will direct him where he wants to see
See,
more
okay.
video,
So it's not quite time yet.
but it's related. and
coming,
Yes,
okay.
we don't want to forget about it.
Do we also need to have a discussion on that, firehouse pipe fix problem?
Yes,
Sharing electric cord with me. So I
we can
can
do that. Although,
get back into the.
yeah, we got to connect with them. But let's do an update. next-
You said you wanted to bring it
Yeah,
up.
we should probably pause, Tyler, because it sounds like there might be an update where we don't need to re-elevate the whole thing.
Okay.
Is it
Well-
okay if we move to adjourn now?
I think so. Yeah, we'll do that.
All right, all right, all in
Aye.
favor?
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Here, guys. I need to
Morgan,
finish this.
aye. Meeting is adjourned.